Hey, take a close look at this picture right here. You see anybody you recognize? Anybody at all? Well, this is an old picture. It's about 30 years old. It's from when I was a sophomore in high school. And if you look right up here, this pirate looking guy right above my face, that's me when I was about 15 years old. So this guy right here is me. And this is from a play we did in high school in the summer. It was called the Rose Center Summer Players. Can you guess the name of this play? Look at this guy down here with his green on. Captain Hook. Who would this be? Peter Pan. This was Peter Pan. And so I enjoyed being in plays in high school. This was one of the first ones I had done, and we did a bunch of plays. Probably my favorite one we did was a play called Guys and Dolls. It's a Broadway musical. And we actually got to go to New York City and sing on Broadway for some famous actors and actresses on Broadway, and got to meet several of them. There's some people you probably know in this video other than me. Here's me, and I think I was Starkey the Pirate. This is Randy Green, that played Captain Hook. He was the principal at Meadowview, and now he's the principal at the alternative school here in town. This guy right here, does he look like he has a familiar face? That's actually Mr. Taylor's son. His name is Sammy Taylor, too. That's Mr. Taylor's son. If you have an older brother or sister at East High, they might have known Officer Stansel, who's the security guard at East High. That's Travis Stansel, the security guard. Chris Morlock played Peter Pan. Chris is a professor at Walter State. I think he's a professor of drama or music or something. This girl right here is my sister, actually. She teaches at Union Heights. I don't really remember who anybody else is, but there's some people that you might know. But it's fun to be in a play. Why am I showing you this? It's because this week's story is a play. And so if you'll get your books out and open them up to page 200. 200 in your book, in your reading book. And we're going to look at a story for the rest of this week called Catch Me If You Can. Catch Me If You Can. So just like that play that I was in that I showed you a picture of was Peter Pan, this story is a play also. And plays are different when you read them because they have the names of the characters and the lines that the characters say. So sometimes they have stage directions. And so let's read what a play is as we look at the genre. A play is a story that can be performed for an audience. Plays list a cast of characters. The cast of characters names each character and may include a brief description of the character's role. So it's a list. The cast of characters is a list that names each character and maybe a brief description of their role in the play. Authors of plays include stage directions to help set the scene and to develop the characters. Stage directions are set in italics and within parentheses. We'll see it as we read the text. Plays use lines of dialogue to reveal the plot. So the story, as I said, is called Catch Me If You Can. Now, there's some words that we need to know as we get into this story. You'll be glad to know there's only 4 vocabulary words this week. And they are, the first one is adoringly. Adoringly. You probably know the word adore. Somebody said, I just adore you. Adoringly. If you act adoringly, you act with a lot of love and admiration. So if someone adores you, they love you. And if you act adoringly, you act with love and admiration. She gazed at her new little kitten adoringly. Capable. If a person is capable, he or she has the skill or ability to do something. I think you're capable of doing this job. I might say to you, I think you're capable of making all A's or all A's and B's. Bet your mom and dad have told you something like that before. They think you're capable of doing something. Look at this word. Spectators. Spectators. What are spectators? Well, spectators are people who watch an event, such as a sports competition. Have you ever been to a UT football game? If you sat in the stands and watched the game, or any kind of ball game, you were a spectator. If you went to a concert and sat and listened to the music, you were a spectator in the audience. Thousands of spectators went to the concert to see the new rock band. And the last word here is disbelief. If belief means you believe something, then dis means not. So it means not to believe it, right? Disbelief is not believing that something is true. The audience gasped in disbelief when the magician disappeared. They couldn't believe it. All right. Let me give you some background to this story. It's an old Greek mythology story, I guess, or old story. And it's about a girl named Atalanta. Atalanta. It looks like Atlanta, Georgia, but it has an extra A in here, so we say Atalanta. Atalanta's father left her in the woods as a baby. Raised by a bear, Atalanta could run fast. She decided to marry the man who could beat her in a race. Hippomenes loved Atalanta, but he needed help to win the race. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, gave him 3 golden apples. During the race, Hippomenes dropped the apples. Atalanta picked them up and lost the race, and she married Hippomenes. So these are supposed to be the golden apples given to Hippomenes by Aphrodite, and they helped him win the race. So I bet this is a story that you've not heard of before, huh? Well, let's go to our reading. Where is it? Lost it here. Here we go. Catch Me If You Can. So as we look at it right away, we see it's different, isn't it? It's got that cast of characters, the list of characters. So we have the narrator, we have King Henry, we have Atalanta, there's 2 messengers, there's 5 young men, there's young John, and there's spectators, 4 to 5 spectators. So let's read this play. The narrator says, once upon a time there lived a princess named Atalanta who could run as fast as the wind. Atalanta run, and these are the stage directions. This tells Atalanta what to do. If the girl is playing Atalanta in the play. Atalanta runs on, stops to check wind, sticks finger in mouth, holds it up, and then runs in place a bit. Not only was she a good runner, she was also bright and clever. Atalanta points to her brain. And very handy. Atalanta could fix or build almost anything. She takes out a small hammer and fixes a chair. Many young men thought she was wonderful and wanted to marry her. 5 young men enter, gaze at her adoringly. She turns her back on them and then looks over her shoulder and waves them away. They exit sadly. Atalanta's father, King Henry, thought it was high time for her to get married, and the king enters. King says, Atalanta, my dear, it's time for you to settle down. Atalanta rolling her eyes. Oh, Dad, we've had this talk before. King says, yes, I know, and you still haven't listened to me, so I've decided to choose your husband for you. Atalanta says, you must be kidding. I haven't decided if I even want to get married, and if I do, I am perfectly capable of choosing my own husband. Besides, you've taught me to think for myself, and what I really want to do right now is to go out and see the world. King, wherever did you get such a silly idea? Atalanta says, from you, right after you returned from your 10th trip around the world. There's Atalanta and King Henry. King, oh, well, that was official kingly business, mostly. And since I'm the king and your father, you will do as I say. Atalanta, but Dad. King, no buts. I've thought of the perfect way to choose your husband. I will hold a race, and whoever wins will also win the right to marry you. Atalanta, as if cooking up an idea. Whatever you say, Dad, but I get to race too. If I lose, steps towards the audience, and I don't plan to, steps back, I will accept the wishes of the young man who wins the race. King says, you've got yourself a deal. They shake hands and then walk off together. The narrator says the king was pleased because not only would he get his daughter married, everyone would get to watch a good race. So messengers were sent throughout the kingdom to announce the race. 2 messengers enter and unroll scrolls. First messenger, hear ye, hear ye. Second messenger, His Highness King Henry announces a race and invites all young men to participate. First messenger says, the winner wins the right to marry his daughter. Totally awesome, Princess Atalanta. Second messenger, no kidding. Can we try out too? First messenger, why not? Second messenger, let's get out our sneakers. And they run off. There's the messengers. Narrator. Atalanta, determined to win, got up every morning at dawn to run. She runs in. Atalanta, checking time on her watch. Phew, all this practice is really improving my time. Well, one more jog around the town. And she runs off. The narrator says, as the day of the race grew nearer, young men began to arrive. 5 men enter. The first young man, I'm so ready for this race. Second young man, not as ready as I am. Third young man, I even went out and bought a new pair of running shoes. Shows off his shoes. The fourth young man, just imagine, after the race, I'll be marrying Princess Atalanta. Fifth young man, hey, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. What does that mean? Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. That phrase is called an idiom. We're going to talk about that in a minute, so keep that phrase in your mind. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. The narrator. Just then, young John walked by. He lived in the town and had seen Atalanta only from a distance, but he knew how bright and interesting she was. Young John enters. Second young man. Hey, young John, are you going to try out for the race? Young John says, I was thinking about it. First young man, you're going to have to do more than just think about it to beat us. Third young man, so you want a chance to marry Princess Atalanta too? Young John, not really. I just want a chance to talk to her, get to know her. Fifth young man, talk to her? What's the deal with that? The men scoff at him. Young John, I just don't think it's right for Atalanta's father to give her away as a prize. She should get to choose who she wants to marry, or even if she wants to get married at all. First young man, that's really weird. Let's go, guys. Hope you're following along in your book with me. The narrator says, each evening to get in shape for the race, young John went out for a run. He runs around the stage. So he could run as fast as the wind. Soon he could run as fast as the wind. Young John, jogging in place. I think I'm ready. Practicing really does make perfect. And jogs off. The narrator says, at last, the day of the race arrived. Trumpets sounded. Messengers enter and blow fanfare on kazoos. Okay, kazoos sounded, and the runners and spectators gathered. Young men, young John, spectators, messengers, and Atalanta enter. All runners stretch out, and King Henry enters. King says, welcome, welcome, everyone, on this great day. To the runners, I wish you good luck. And to you, my dear Atalanta, I must say farewell. By tomorrow, you will be married. Atalanta, don't be so sure about that, Dad. Steps to the audience. They're going to eat my dust. The king says, runners to the starting line. They line up at one side of the stage. On your mark, get set, go. I'll start running in slow motion. Spectators do silent, slow motion cheering. The narrator says, at first, the runners ran as a group, but soon Atalanta pulled ahead. She does so. Before long, most of the runners fell down, exhausted. They do, but not young John. Except for one runner, young John kept right up with Atalanta. They're side by side now. Atalanta says, what do you think you're doing? Young John says, keeping up with you. Atalanta says, I can see that. I'm impressed. And they smile at each other. The narrator says, Atalanta and young John cross the finish line side by side. Spectators cheer. Atalanta and young John stop running, breathing hard, high-five each other. King coming to them. Who is this young man, Atalanta? Atalanta says, Father, this is young John from our town. And young John extends his hands to the king, and they shake. This must be young John here. Young John says, pleased to meet you, your highness. And the king says, well, young John, you didn't exactly win the race, but you came closer than any of the other runners. So I award you the grand prize, the right to marry my daughter. Atalanta frowns. And young John says, thank you very much, sir, but I couldn't possibly marry her unless she wanted to marry me. I would really just like a chance to talk to her and get to know her better. King walks over to the spectators, shaking his head in disbelief. Atalanta, who's smiling, says, I'd love to get to know you better too, but I should tell you right up front, I'm not sure about the marriage thing. What I really want to do is go and see the world. Young John, no kidding. That's exactly what I've been planning to do. What are some places you want to visit? They start walking off. I've just got to see the pyramids and the Grand Canyon, the narrator says. And so Atalanta and young John spent a lovely afternoon together. By the end of the day, they were good friends. The next day, young John set off to see the pyramids, while Atalanta took off for China to see the Great Wall. Perhaps someday they will meet up again. Who knows? In any case, we can be sure that they are both living, and everybody says, happily ever after. The end. What do you think about that story? Young John and Atalanta. Would you have done what young John did, guys? Or would you have married her? And girls, would you have felt like Atalanta? You wouldn't want your husband to be chosen for you, would you? So what was the king's plan for finding a husband? Well, he was going to have a race, and then whoever wins the race got to be his daughter's husband. And what does Atalanta think about that? She doesn't like it, does she? She wants to choose her own husband. She doesn't even know if she wants to get married. She wants to go see the world. What does young John think about the king's plan, and how is young John different from the other young men? Well, we read that he said the same thing that the Atalanta wants. He said Atalanta should choose for her husband for herself, and if she even wants to be married or not. Of course, all the other young men wanted to marry her. How was the result of the race unexpected? Well, I knew John was training really hard. I didn't know if he would beat her or she would beat him, but I didn't think they would tie. And we expected somebody to win the race and get to marry her, but didn't happen, did it? They just walked off together. Well, we went, let me go back to that page there if I can find it here. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. This says it right here on page 206 in your book. Don't count your chickens before they hatched. Like I told you a minute ago, that's called an idiom, not an idiot, but an idiom. An idiom. Let's take a look at what idioms are here. Okay. And so this little anchor chart is called idioms, adages, and proverbs. Idioms, adages, and proverbs are types of common expressions and sayings that have meanings beyond what can be understood by their individual words. So here's some idioms, what an idiom is. It's an expression that means something different from the meaning of its individual words. Like, who put a bee in her bonnet? That means she was really mad. There wasn't really a bee in her bonnet. An adage is a short statement that expresses a general truth or a piece of advice. Actions speak louder than words. Actions don't really speak, do they? This is just an adage that means you can say that you're going to do something, but you really prove it when you actually do it. You act with your actions. Proverbs, a short popular saying, usually of ancient origin, that expresses a truth based on common sense or experience. Like all that glitters is not gold. It just means just because something looks really good doesn't mean it is really good. So these are all types of they can be types of figurative language. They don't mean exactly what they say. But I want us to focus this week on idioms. And so I have on the next slide, a classroom who shares a bunch of idioms with you. So in just a moment, I want you to go to the next slide and listen to all the idioms that they give you examples of. And they do some funny things with those idioms. They'll make you laugh. And I want you, for an assignment today, to make an idiom poster. And so an idiom, remember, is a phrase that we say that doesn't really mean what it says. Have you ever heard what it says? Have you ever heard anybody say, I've got a frog in my throat? Sometimes when I have allergies like I have this week, I feel like there's a frog in my throat. That means that I'm hoarse. I get hoarse. It doesn't really mean that I have a frog in my throat. I looked for a picture of somebody with a frog in their throat being silly, but I couldn't find one on the internet, but I found a frog with a big throat. So what I want you today to do for your assignment, today's Wednesday, you can turn it in by Friday because you got a couple other things to do for me in ELA today. But by Friday, I would love to have an idiom poster. By the way, if you do a really good job on your posters, I've been hanging them out in the hall in the classroom, so outside my classroom. So do a really good job on it, okay? And it might get hung in the hall. People come by and see them all the time. So your job is to pick an idiom. You can listen closely to the video on the next slide. There's lots of them in that video. You can go on the internet and type in list of idioms, and it'll give you 100 probably idioms you can choose from. And then you'll type in what your idiom is. You need to type in what it means. If you don't know, ask your mom or dad or look it up on the internet. What does this mean? Okay? So you can't just put your idiom. You have to explain to me what it means. Okay? And I'll have your template set up. It'll say type idiom here, type what it means here, put picture here. So you'll have that just to guide you. But find an idiom. Remember, an idiom is a phrase that does not mean what it says. It's something that's kind of silly. I've got a frog in my throat. Or have you heard somebody say, it's raining cats and dogs? Or have you heard somebody say, you got a chip on your shoulder today? It means you got a bad attitude or you've got a bad mood today. So those are all idioms. Like I said, there's some students presenting several to you on the next slide. You can choose one of them. You can find one of your own. Maybe there's one that you say that is not on the slides. But make sure it's an idiom. Explain what it means and add a picture from the internet. As long as it has something to do with the idiom. I couldn't find a picture of a frog in the throat, but I could find a picture of a frog, like I said, with a big throat. So that's the best one I could find for my idiom. And that you would get 100 for doing this, okay? All right, so as long as you get this turned in to me and do these 3 parts, you'll get a 100 on it. So make sure you get that to me by Friday. Okay? All right, so also we've been working on progressive verb tenses. On Monday, you did the present progressive tense, which is like if somebody says, what are you doing? You would say, I am walking, I am reading, I am doing my homework. It's that am with the verb with an ing at the end. Today you're looking at past progressive. It's the same thing. You have that verb with an ing, but you're using a past tense helping verb like I was walking, I was talking, I was doing this. So it just makes it past. It makes it happen in the past, okay? So it's not hard. So you're going to have spelling practice today. You're going to have at the bottom of your spelling practice, you're going to have some verb tense practice, and you're going to have an idiom poster due. So you've got 3 things to do for me today. And so that the spelling practice and the verb practice are on the same form. So they're together. So you really just have 2 assignments from me today for ELA. So go listen to the students on the next slide, and then I think you'll enjoy hearing them come up with some idioms. Then go ahead and watch the last slide about the verbs, then get to your assignments today, okay? Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the story Atalanta too. Talk to you later.